So today will be sort of a combined episode talking about what I got into yesterday regarding Canada and a possible financial crisis triggered by Trudeau basically nuking all confidence in the banking system there, and also mixing that in with some of my more regular U.S. market commentary, because I did say something yesterday that I want to roll back a little bit. I said, it was a little hyperbolic, I think, at this point, that what Trudeau did could spark a global financial crisis. Now, I want to amend that a little bit. In effect, what the worst case scenario is that the effect of the emergency order, if it remains in place, is that people will lose confidence in the financial system. They will continue to try and pull their money out of the banks. And even if they don't crash the banks themselves, these people will be debanked. And that is going to be very bad for the Canadian economy. The banking system, it's a lubrication for an economy. It relieves a lot of frictions when it comes to commerce. It makes it easier for people to trade with one another. I don't want to go too in depth into that. I think that people generally understand that concept. If you don't, I don't know. Maybe I could do a special, bonus episode or something explaining why banking systems, when they're not incredibly corrupt and just terrible and god awful, why they're actually important and why, banks in principle are a good thing. But just sort of taking it for granted that banking is a net positive for the economy. If you destroy the banking system, that's going to create a lot of problems in Canada. Will destroy the Canadian economy. It will set Canada back. I don't know if the correct term would, or if it would be correct to say that it will set them back decades or even further. But it will cripple them immensely. Now, this in and of itself is not enough to destabilize global financial markets. It's not that Canada is so big of a market that it can take down the global market, that it can take down the United States. Canada is smaller than some U.S. states. It's not a huge economy. Canada itself can crash, and it's not going to directly have enough. The waves are not going to be big enough, all else equal, to crash the rest of the world or to crash the United States. But what I think is the risk here, how what is happening in Canada could spill over into the rest of the world, is that what is happening in Canada is a crisis of globalism. You have Chrystia Freeland, who is, I forget her exact title. It's like a director or a governor, board of governors, something like that, over at the World Economic Forum. She was the biographer of George Soros. You have Justin Trudeau, who's a product of the World Economic Forum's like junior leadership program or something like that. Klaus Schwab has said in the past how the Canadians, the Davos Canadians are some of the the most loyal members and the most high profile, or the highest ranking. He feels like Canada is one of the countries that his group has been able to penetrate the most. And so when you see these people doing what they're doing, when you see them seizing the assets of citizens who have committed wrongthing, who support the wrong political cause, who are their political enemies, it's not something that you can really just look at as if it is isolated to Canada, because these people, they're not independent actors. It's not that, Justin Trudeau just so happens to be a tyrant, and this Chrystia Freeland character is okay going along with it. Because this policy is being carried out by these two individuals in such a Davos-controlled country as Canada, it can be seen as an action of the broader World Economic Forum. And the World Economic Forum has more sway and control over the Western world than just about any other group. Even if a Western leader is not, a member of the World Economic Forum, they want to be in it, and they want to please these people. They are the Western elite. And so the threat to the rest of the world, to the global financial system, is that this spreads, that what is happening in Canada overall spreads to these other countries, that other countries start implementing this, or that their citizens get wise to this ahead of time and start pulling their money out of the financial system and start decoupling from the global banking system on their own. Because as I've said many times before, what's keeping the United States economy nominally above water, nominally in the green, nominally growing, nominally positive, is confidence. It's confidence in the system. Things continue to go on as they always have because people have no reason to believe that it will ever change. Like I've said before with the Fed always bailing people out, that created the assumption, the base case, that if anything bad ever happens, the Fed will rescue us. And so you can buy stocks in unlimited amounts at any valuation, and you can be guaranteed that over time they will always go up. Stocks go up just as surely as money in your bank account is safe, and it's always going to be there. But what's going on in Canada has the potential to shake people's confidence in that. And even though I don't think in the United States, for example, if everybody just went and pulled their money out of the bank, that's not going to crash the financial system. That's not going to crash the banks, I don't think. It could crash individual banks, but the overall system, they don't care about actually, George Gammon was saying this earlier today, but I would have said the same thing anyway. They don't care about our deposits. They haven't for a long time. They have the Fed. As long as you have the Fed, you don't need deposits. The Fed can create as many deposits as they want. And so these banks will always be, solvent on paper. But still, the banking system is not built for people leaving it. The U.S. economy is not built for people operating outside of the banking system. And so if people start to do that, and we start to see a movement away from, the Wall Street financial system, that is going to have major impacts on the economy. What Trudeau is doing is he is introducing a tremendous amount of uncertainty to what up until this point has been an extremely certain aspect of life for most people, and that is the financial system. It's not like, Robert Mugabe is expropriating people's bank accounts because they disagree with his politics. This is Canada, right next door. It is the one country that Americans see as, the most like us because, generally because they don't sound that different from us. And they're right next door. People identify with them and say, hey, Canada, that feels just like us. The joke, the 51st state. And in the modern era, news travels fast. And so I don't think that it would be unreasonable for Americans to see what's going on in Canada if Canadians start to wake up more and really start to get scared and try to pull their assets out. There are already lots of people whose accounts have been frozen and whose accounts will still be frozen. Many people will start to believe that it can happen here, which it can. And if you think it will end in bank accounts, you're wrong, because Trudeau's emergency orders appear to also affect all financial institutions. So if you have, let's say, a stock portfolio or 401k or something like that, this is not just your savings account and your checking account. It's all financial services. They've made that clear now. Chrystia Freeland in her press conference, she's using the term, financial service providers or financial services or, financial firms, whatever. She's not just saying banks. So where this gets really interesting is if people start to try and sell their stocks and get their money out of brokerage accounts. Because unlike with savings accounts and checking accounts, where the numbers don't really mean anything, when someone sells their stocks or sells their bonds, that's sold into an open market. That makes prices go down. And once we get a little bit of that, once there's a good bit of selling, and people know why folks are selling, that can spark even more selling because people are running for the exits, hoping that they don't get caught and consumed by the fire. So that's the way I think that this could play out very badly. How this could go in a very bad direction for them, and it really makes you wonder. Is this a part of some grand master plan, or are these people just this stupid? Honestly, I think they're just this stupid because they are carrying out tyrannical policies that frankly look like they were written for a post-cash society, a cashless society, and they just haven't had time to implement the abolition of cash yet. And so they have to let the cat out of the bag on how they plan on controlling us when pulling your money out of the bank is no longer an option. Now, speaking of uncertainty, I saw in Zero Hedge an article featuring Zoltan, who is, I believe, what's his title? Something like short-term interest rate strategist or something for Credit Suisse. He's joining the chorus of people calling for a reverse wealth effect to end high inflation. Essentially, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, after the 2008 crash, Ben Bernanke's big idea for reinvigorating the U.S. economy was to replicate the housing bubble by creating, bubbles in other asset classes, including housing, in order to stimulate the wealth effect. Whereas, that's a phenomenon where assets that people own go up in value, so people feel richer, they feel more financially secure, and they spend a bigger percentage of their paycheck every month. They save less, they spend more. And so this stimulates consumption, which will, in an environment where, the money supply is expanding, if you have, more consumption and more money supply, you're going to get ever higher inflation. And since the Fed doesn't have direct control over money production, that falls largely to the banks who inflate or who create money out of thin air. They lend it into existence, so to speak, and through other means. The Fed, rather than just controlling the money supply and turning off the spigot, which, there are ways they could do that. For example, if they, restricted, if they started burning, bank reserves and imposing some kind of reserve ratio, minimum reserve ratio, and started raising that. But that's a little complicated. I don't want to get into that right now. But what you need to understand is that right now, the easiest thing for the Fed to do is just to get people to stop spending their money. Because people have access to a lot of cash, and because of that, they feel wealthy, and they don't feel like they have to work. There's a lot of folks like that. People point to, 20-year-old Bitcoin millionaires. I think that's a very, very small percentage of the population. I think what's having a much bigger impact is probably early retirements. People whose stocks have, their stock portfolios have ballooned to such a ridiculous extent and multiplied so many times, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times what they expected, that they're retiring earlier because they're saying, well, look at all this money I have. If I wait until I'm 70 to retire, I couldn't spend all this before I die. So I can afford to retire right now, so I will. And I'm not that interested in ever, getting another job, or at least getting a job where I have to, work full time. But certainly, that could also apply to other people in younger age brackets. But I think it's probably the most prominent amongst, the 55 plus crowd. Labor force participation continues to decline. It is not recovered from the big drop that we had in March of 2020, just like it never recovered after the big drop that we had back in 2008. And so the idea is, if we can reverse that wealth effect where people don't feel so rich, if their asset prices crash, then they will feel poor. What is the result when you feel poor? Well, you start to save your money and you start working more. So it will decrease consumption and it will increase production. That is how you fight inflation. The way that that the cost of living goes down and that standards of living rise in a society is when they consume less and they produce more. It's a very basic formula, but that's the secret to wealth. You want to produce more than you consume, and that's how you get wealthy. America has not done that in the last 15 years, ever since the 2008 crisis. We've tried to have it both ways. We've wanted to get richer while also saving no money and not producing a whole lot. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.